Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special episode of Prinsight's Global Spotlight. Today, I am joined by Diego Davila, who is a renowned, so many things, really, a C-suite industrial executive, the CEO of D&L Group, that does strategic execution and industrial advisory through metals and critical minerals, manufacturing, downstream industrial systems, so many things. And I have been actually tracking Diego's work for some time now, and it's been difficult to find time to get together and to share this conversation with you and to have it. So, Diego, thank you so much for making the time and joining me here today.
Thank you, Nomi, for having me here with you today. I'm excited to share this space with you.
Well, thank you. You know, your recent work, well, you've done so much as focused on copper, other critical minerals, and just the entire chain, really the entire supply chain, and what is required to examine its bottlenecks, to basically fix them, what the world is missing, what it should be doing. And you've been spot on and speaking around the world on these matters for so long. So maybe we'd start with copper because we've been pretty focused on that, and I know that's one of the many things you've been focused on, and what you see in terms of what's happening geopolitically, globally, structurally with respect to that particular base metal.
Well, I think we've reached the point where the landscape it's not as it used to be in previous times. It they are indeed challenging times, but also very exciting times because we have a lot of things to do for the future. Um, Things have changed a lot in the sense that I believe that in the past people used to look at the value chain in silos. So meaning, exploration in one side, maybe smelting in another side, copper mills in another, fabrication, electroplating, and so on. And now I believe that there's very increasing need of looking at the value chain as a complete system. As you mentioned, I developed my own framework, as a matter of fact, that's called Integrated Metals Execution. And what we do is we try to look at the entire chain and operate in the intersection of those silos in order to make the whole chain work. And what I have observed in recent times, and what has been maybe one of the detonators of the change in general of the situation, the copper situation in the world, was the imposition of tariffs. That was one of the first episodes that already started originating certain difficulties because of the limitation that the United States started having with the import of copper derivatives, not necessarily copper cathodes, because they remain exempt of tariffs up till today. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, but they remain exempt of the tariffs. But every other copper transformed type of a product has a high level of tariff, and that makes it very hard for OEMs that at the end of the day are the ones that need that specific pieces of copper in their equipments for whether they are grid, uh, EV charging stations, HVAC, or even data centers, which is a very hot topic right now, can't afford not to have this type of material for infrastructure. So once again, the landscape has changed a lot. I believe now we have problems as well in terms of geopolitics, as you said, the war in Iran, the Strait of Hormuz, the absence of sulfuric acid, for example, for smelting purposes. So everything is getting, a little bit crazy, if I can find an appropriate word, I would say. But once again, when there is chaos, there is also opportunity. So, you know, that's how I would synthesize, make a synthesis of what we're facing right now.
No, that's super interesting, and you've been following it, for quite some time, and what you have developed, your integrated metals execution framework, the origination of that, in the originality of that seems like is something that is so required right now. And I wonder if, as you're speaking with people around the world, with groups around the world, if you're noticing they're kind of finally beginning to understand that it's the system, this value chain you speak about, that matters more than any one particular node or point on it. But at the same time, you mentioned opportunity. So from an investor or capital perspective, where are there, in your opinion, the biggest opportunities?
Mhm. So you asked me two questions. So
Yes, I
first,
did.
so the first one, in the past, once again, industries looked or focused in their specialties. So I'm a member of different associations. One of them is SME, for example, is the Society of Mining Exploration, Mining, Metallurgy, and Exploration, and it is. I mean, I have peers, and they have admitted that we used to look at things in an individual type of way, so in a silo perspective, and we remained at extraction, or we remained at smelting, and we just worried about our own KPIs. So we extracted the earth or the ore, and we just or we turned it into concentrate, and we just stayed there, and we didn't really care about the next step of the chain. So now we are gaining more and more conscience about how important it is to be interconnected. That's why I always speak about the system, and I see this being increasingly more noticeable. And I always mention this in meetings, and I think that sometimes people are getting tired already, but finally they're getting in the mood, and I hear this more often in conversation, and this is very 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 good news, and very optimistic for me for the future, because if we keep thinking the way we thought in the past, I just think that things are not going to work, because if we are just out of coordination, um, unfortunately, the expectations that we have in terms of all the developments that we want to do in the future are just not going to be realistic. So that's the answer for the first question. And in terms of opportunity, what I see is that again, I don't see that there's a matter of just companies getting aligned. I don't see that there's a matter of institutions getting aligned anymore. I see that there is a worldwide opportunity of governments getting aligned. There's a lot of people speaking about the United States. There's a lot of people speaking about China, and there's a lot of people seemingly comparing them, and even trying to make them compete, or um, kind of like placing them as enemies, let's say. And I don't necessarily share that perspective. I just think that they simply built their chains in a different way. The United States built their supply chain in a vertical way, which was more efficient back in the day, but it depended heavily on other partners in other places in the world, geographies. And now with tariffs, obviously, that costs several restrictions. And in China, the chain is built in a horizontal way, so they have everything. They have all the infrastructure that they need. But one of the problems that they have, in the case of copper, for example, is to the degrading of the ores, for example. They have to spend more money in capex and dig deeper. For instance, that's one of the problems that they have. Whereas in other places, they have higher ore grades, like in Chile or Peru, for example. But there are other problems in those countries, like the time that it takes for a project to come into life. A copper project in average in the world takes about 18 to 20 years, if you take into consideration licensing, if you take into consideration permits, and many other things. And funny enough, when I was at PDAC this year in Canada, I learned that in Peru, it in average it takes 60 years to develop
Wow.
a copper project, but the concentration of copper is much higher, is 0.5% in the ore. So there is opportunities in these countries, for example, but one of the observations that I have, because I'm Peruvian, I'm Belgian Peruvian, but I'm based in Peru, is that we don't invest as exporting countries. We don't invest in value added. So what we do is we export concentrates, and that's always the constructive criticism that I've tried to translate to my peers, is that we should invest in more infrastructure. We should invest in more smelting. We should have more cathodes. We should be able to send them to the world, and we should even go further down the stream and have copper mills and transform them into wire rods or cables or bus bars or some other things that can definitely add value to the world, and to the value chain once again. Um, I also think that there's opportunity, specifically speaking, for the United States, which is a very large market, and has very high expectations of what the future is going to bring in terms of artificial intelligence, in terms of military defense, and so many other things. And what's lacking, surprisingly, in the United States, and people are getting aware once again, and we're coming back again to what we said earlier, is the importance of the mid to downstream part of the chain. So they have been focusing too much on obtaining licensing, and many people are claiming, even in the Congress or the Senate, about getting more mines, getting more permits. But speaking about the times that I just described to you, and making a mine come to life, we're speaking about some serious time, and we can't wait 18 years until we have our data centers for the purposes that are right in front of us, you know? So there are several, or a couple of copper mills in the US, for instance, but the feedstock that they use is scrap. And in order to be able to use cathodes, they would need to invest heavily in infrastructure as well, and to change their technology. That's why I also think that the stockpiling policy that's being applied in the US is not the solution. While policymakers sometimes could believe that could represent one of the possibilities to fix the problem. But there is a difference, I think, between the people that have been on the field, the operators, and the ones that are on the policy side. So it is important to be in synergy with these people, and lucky enough, I have the opportunity to talk to some of the folks at the Department of Energy or the Department of War, and I think that they're getting there, and they are getting more convinced that they need to be a little bit more open-minded, maybe, and develop more allies so they can secure the supply chain for their own country and the so-called national security, because it's very important. That would be my answer to this second question.
Yeah, I mean, and you crystallize the problems and the potential solutions so well, Diego, which is another reason that your work resonates well with me personally, but I think throughout the world, and all the individuals and entities and governments and miners that you speak with. You're kind of bringing this all together in a way where it's so timely, but it's also so urgent, because as you mentioned, the AI story is not something that we're going to wait 16 or 18 years to have enough of a physical build out, the transformers, the substations, the switchgear, the cooling, the grounding, all of that, to really keep up with it without allied supply, which just take one of the many things you just unpacked right now as being very important. And I've also noticed, on that note, that there's been a lot more activity in the sort of M&A and the mergers and acquisitions space, in copper and in other mines, of trying to sort of bridge some of that value chain time gap, by acquiring around the world, acquiring components from different allies where the right component of the value chain goes to help the right country as they're developing their copper strategy. Are you seeing that coming to fruition as well?
Oh yeah, well yes, there's been very large mergers of the big players have pretty much come together and acquired larger portions of the market. Let's say there's been also a few that had been announced, but at the end of the day didn't work out quite well. But I do think that the fact that these people are getting together and are getting stronger but getting united, it is giving them a more a powerful position, not just by producing more metal or mineral and hence more metal, but also they are realizing the need of implementing more infrastructure in the mid to downstream part of the chain once again. And I insist a lot on you'll hear me speaking a lot of the mid to downstream because I think that that's where the main bottleneck relies. And I think that countries like Chile, for example, which huge mining potential for copper specifically speaking, are focusing a lot in now in projects for mid to downstream specifically. I see that even Codelco, for example, now there have been a lot of changes. They had been experiencing certain difficulties in terms of management and other administrative things, internal things, and now they're trying to trying to improve and they have made some interesting propositions, and I wish them the best because
Sure.
they're obviously a company from the region. And yes, I hope that they will be able to be successful as well. But indeed, the market has been reduced in terms of the number of players because of the mergers, but they have solidified their positions in terms of share. So yes, I think this is positive for the market.
That's interesting what you say. I mean, again, emphasizing the midstream to downstream. If countries like Peru, like Chile, can develop, a way to sort of monetize that component of the downstream or midstream side, I should think that's better in general for their economies going forward, to not simply be on one part of the supply chain, but actually to own more of the value throughout the chain, which is a lot of the work that you do.
Yeah, actually, the in the United States, for example, there's the critical mineral policy, and it's called critical minerals for the countries that actually need the material and they do not dispose too much of it. And countries like Chile, for example, have written plans where they call them strategic minerals, not critical, because they're suppliers of the minerals. So it's good because more and more I see countries that are finally getting putting more attention in this matter. It's strategic minerals. I see Chile. I've seen Brazil writing a plan. I've seen Japan now. France. So people are gaining more conscience about what's really coming up in the near future, and that's positive. But what I'm still reluctant, and I still think that there's a lot of opportunity for improvement, or at least to get together, is in terms of international policy, free trade agreements, and facilitating the exchange from one country to the other. Because if we close doors or we want to remain within one geography, I just don't think that we will be able to achieve the objectives that we wanted to achieve in terms of humanity, not just in terms of one country or the other. So, and at the end of the day, we are just developing so fast in recent years, and we're just doing so much, and there's so many bright people doing great things that it would be such a shame that if we can't just have the right infrastructure to let them develop what they know.
That is an amazing way to put this. That we may have countries, withholding, restricting, etc. But at the end of the day, we are one humanity. That's a beautiful way to also look at the economics of it, the framework of it, and also what can be achieved in the future. And again, where there is opportunity to be involved from a perspective of framework of capital and of other things. I would love to continue, and I hope we can continue this conversation further, Diego. I know you're doing so many things, but as we kind of come to a wrap here today, finally, for investors who are listening or viewing this right now, trying to position themselves around copper today, and other commodities as well. What should they be watching, and where can they best follow your work?
Well, I think they should be very close to the geopolitical developments, which obviously are very volatile as well in recent days. Same as it's almost as volatile as the LME, I would say, in recent times. But they should be observing very closely the opportunities. And I repeat myself, I don't want to sound like a like I'm repeating myself, but mid to downstream in the US, it's a great opportunity. If I was a private equity group, I would invest there definitely. If it's not in a copper mill, maybe the next step, fabrication. And if it's not in fabrication, maybe in electroplating, definitely. OEMs, once again, there's a huge need. I can tell you for a fact that in some cases, OEMs are importing material despite the fact they have 50% of tariffs, just because they need to have the equipment, and they are passing the pricing to their final customers. So the this protectionism or this policy might favor some players, yes, and I agree to an extent, because the countries want to protect their industries, but uh, it impacts others, and these big players that have customers like Google or Facebook, or this very large industries, or people like Nvidia and stuff like that. They can't afford to have such large expenses, and eventually this is going to collapse. So opportunity as well would be revising properly, to my concern, and to my personal opinion, maybe certain specific things on Section 232, if we speak on regarding the United States, and making certain exceptions. I think that some of the things that are being done right is that the United States is actively looking as well for some allies as well, to secure the chain, and eventually achieve the mission, which is to have a very solid program of national security. And if you can't have the material, and if you can't accomplish the goals that you had at the beginning, obviously you will be failing. So that would be my answer in terms of what to be watching to. And I believe you asked me a second question, or am I mistaken?
I did, and yes, I do the compound questions. And thank you for explaining all the things that you did. And I just wanted to know if you could share with our viewers and listeners where best they can follow you and your work.
Oh yeah, thank you very much. Yes, like that. So yeah, obviously you can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm as Diego Davila, and the page of my company, which is GNL Group. That's where I share most of my content, and some white papers as well. And you can also you know contact me through the page, and you can subscribe to my newsletter, and I will be happy to have more of this conversation whenever you require it, Nomi. I'm very happy to have this exchange with you. It's been a pleasure. It's great, and I hope that more people can engage in this very interesting subject, because once again, I feel that this is getting more and more attention from people, and we are no longer acting as silos or isolated areas. but rather as a system that builds something together. And that's ultimately the goal, I believe.
Thank you so much, Diego. Thank you for your time. Well said at the end there, in terms of our mutuality and goals. And I appreciate you having joined us here today. And for everyone else who has tuned in to our special episode of Princess Global Spotlight today with Diego Davila, thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you very much, Nomi.